If you want to invest in Pokémon promos, here's the easiest way to learn a painful lesson fast. Buy the promos that everyone is buying right now. Buy the promo that just jumped 30% this week. Or buy the card that feels limited just because it came in a special box. Or buy the one that has the prettiest artwork and is being talked about the most online. And then watch what happens over the next 90 days. Because the promo market is built to reward urgency and punish impatience. That's why it's so good at trapping smart people, because promos look simple. One card, one product, one story. It feels safer than betting on an entire set. But that simplicity is exactly what makes it dangerous. Most people don't lose money on promo cards because they picked the wrong card. They lose money because they paid the wrong price at the wrong stage of the supply cycle. In this video, I'm going to give you 5 overhyped traps that keep showing up in promo investing. And I'm going to show you how to spot them before you tie money up in a card that looks hot for a month and then is dead for a year. And I'm not talking about niche, obscure mistakes. I'm talking about the common logic that feels correct, sounds correct, and then ends up getting repeated over and over while quietly draining your bank account and your collection's value. And if you understand these 5 traps, you'll stop buying cards because of vibes and start buying only when the structure supports it. Let's start with the foundation, because promos are not the same game as set cards. A normal set chase card has statistical or distribution-driven supply, which means that it takes pack opening volume or luck to produce copies. A typical promo is deterministic supply. It's guaranteed. If a product ships with one promo, every unit creates one copy. And that changes everything about how supply enters the market, how fast it enters, and how predictable it is. So when someone says this promo is rare, you should immediately translate that into the real question. How many units of this product were produced, and how quickly are those units being opened? That's what you're investing in. Trap number 1 is the exclusive equals rare illusion. This is the biggest and the most common promo mistake. A card can be exclusive and also still have a huge supply. When a product says only available in this box, that sounds like scarcity. But it isn't. If the product is printed in huge volume, then the promo is printed in huge volume. The exclusivity doesn't protect you. It can actually lure you into paying a premium early just because it feels special. Here's how this trap plays out. A new premium collection drops and the promo looks incredible. And let's use the 151 UPC as an example. So the UPC drops, and those promos of Mew and Mewtwo look incredible. And we haven't seen a metal card since the Celebrations UPC. Then the box starts showing up on shelves everywhere. And you see the Mew promo going for around $120 and the Mewtwo promo selling for around $55 online. People everywhere were saying that these promos were different. And that's why they were fetching such a high price tag early on. But what those same people were forgetting was scale. If 250,000 units of the UPC were produced, then that means that there's 250,000 copies of each of those promos. If 500,000 units of the UPC were produced over multiple release waves, then that means that 500,000 copies of each of those promos were going to be produced as well. And modern Pokemon distribution can absolutely hit those numbers across a global market, especially when a product is reprinted and restocked for months. Now, let's add in the modern grading culture. In older sets, lots of promos still existed, but fewer people were rushing to grade those cards. And today, if a card looks good and has a decent price tag, then people rush to submit that card for grading. And that accelerates the supply into slabs, which means that supply is being accelerated into the most price-sensitive segment of the market: investors. So the exclusive equals rare illusion is really just this. It's people mistaking packaging exclusivity for supply restriction. So how do you avoid it? You don't need to know what the exact print run numbers are. You just really need to know what the clues are. Be watching for how long product stays available, how often restocks are happening, and look at how many listings are showing up on eBay and TCG Player at 30 days, at 60 days, and at 90 days. If a promo is truly scarce, then the listings won't expand forever. You'll see the number of people listing cards stabilize, and then you'll also see the number of people undercutting other sellers start to slow down. But if you see the listing count getting bigger and bigger and the cheapest copy getting cheaper and cheaper, you're not watching demand, you're watching supply catch up, which leads to trap number 2, the early price spike mirage. The good promos frequently spike early, and people start treating that like proof of the card's value and scarcity. People see promos that start out at $25 and then they jump up to $70, and they think, this card's a winner. But usually, That's the market discovering what the price for that card needs to be before the supply has caught up with it. Here's what's happening in the first few weeks of a promo being released. Early on, you'll see much fewer sellers online, and that's because the product is still in distribution and a lot of people have not opened the product yet. And some buyers are going to pay a premium for that card just because they either want it early, they're scared that the price is going to jump up to the moon, or because they want to flip it for a quick profit. The market during this stage is very thin, so even a small buying wave can greatly influence the price of a card. Then the second wave hits and more product gets opened. More people start listing cards for sale and more people start submitting copies to PSA. And that's when the market transitions from early scarcity to real liquidity. This is the phase where a lot of promos bleed out. They don't suddenly crash because everyone hates the card. Their price drifts downward because the supply curve is expanding faster than the demand curve. Trap number 3 is influencer amplification. This is where promos get dangerous because they're so easy to promote. A promo card is a perfect thumbnail object. One card, one story, one limited product. And because promos are visually clean and easy to understand, creators often move attention to them quickly. But remember, attention is not liquidity. It's just a temporary spotlight. When a promo's price is mainly driven by attention, you get a spike and then a vacuum. And the vacuum happens because attention rotates to the next thing, but then supply just keeps arriving. This is where people get stuck because they bought the narrative. Then the narrative moved on, and they're holding a promo that needs a new narrative to be able to move. So how do you detect influencer-driven promos? You'll see your social media and your YouTube feeds flooded with post after post talking about a certain promo or how this is the next big one. And the titles will probably use very similar language, often using the word underrated. And when you see that, you're going to see a lot of people trying to get out from under those cards and start selling them. You'll see the same pattern on the seller's side. You'll see the number of cards being listed online jump up dramatically. And then you're going to start seeing people undercutting each other on price. And that exclusive promo suddenly starts selling at a lower and lower price. And the fix isn't to ignore influencers. It's to be able to separate attention from actual demand. You have to ask yourself, who would end up buying this card at a higher price later? Is it someone who master sets promo who has to have it to complete their set? Is it a character collector who will pay up for that character forever no matter what? Is it a cross-collectible group that maybe collects that artist or even that venue that the promo came from? Or is it another investor looking to make a profit off the flip? Because if the buyer pool is mainly other investors, the market is reflexive. And reflexive markets work until they don't. Trap number 4 is the grading spread fantasy. This is the trap that sounds the most logical, which is exactly the reason why it catches most people who consider themselves savvy Pokemon investors off guard. Let's say there's a new promo card that's selling for $60 raw, but a PSA 10 copy of that card is selling for $250. That seems like a huge spread. So a lot of people start thinking, I'm going to buy up a lot of clean raw copies and then grade them and capture that premium. But prices for modern promos collapse fast, and they collapse for predictable reasons. There are 2 numbers that matter more than the spread. The first number is how many cards are getting submitted to PSA. And the second number is how many of those cards are coming back as a Gem Mint 10. If a promo can easily get a 10, and it's well-centered and well-packaged, then you're going to see that premium that you're chasing start to compress as that pop report expands. And that's not my opinion, that's just math. Promos that have an obvious grading upside like that attract bulk submitters. The market becomes competitive, the easy money strategy gets crowded, and when everyone's trying to sell their PSA 10 copy at the same time, the floor drops. So the correct question isn't what's the spread on this card today? The correct question is, what will the spread look like after the next couple waves of cards that people send in for grading start coming back? This is why I like to treat grading cards as a timing strategy and not a permanent edge. If you want to grade promos, you really need to be looking at how scarce that card is in a PSA 10 and not just at today's premium. Start watching the pop report growth rate. If the PSA 10 count is accelerating every month, then that premium is definitely under pressure. Also, keep a watch on the raw floor price. If the raw price for that card is going backwards, but the PSA 10 price is holding, it can look tempting. But sometimes that's just a lag and the price hasn't really adjusted yet, but it usually does. On to trap number 5, and that's emotional scarcity bias. Promos are designed to feel special because they're tied to events or because they have stamps, because they have anniversary logos, because they have unique packaging, and a whole host of other factors. And all of those cues can trigger a very powerful feeling. And I'm betting that most of you know what that feeling is. I don't think it has a name, but it's that feeling of this is a moment. This is my moment to get my hands on a card that has true scarcity that's going to shoot to the moon in pricing. But that feeling only matters financially if there's demand that follows it. A promo can feel meaningful to you and still be a weak investment. So here's how emotional scarcity bias shows up. You see a promo and it gets tied to a holiday like the advent calendar boxes, or a movie, or a new set launch, or the 30th anniversary. And especially with the 30th anniversary promos, you're going to see a lot of people start calling them historical. Prices are going to rise and buyers are going to pay those prices because they want to feel tied to something. They want to emotionally feel connected to the hobby. So to protect yourself from this emotional bias, you need to ask yourself, is this promo required in a collecting ecosystem? Does it complete something? Does it anchor a character collection? Does it have unique art that's clearly amazing and not just different? Or does it have some kind of scarcity that can't be manufactured by printing more product waves? Emotional significance is a variable and it's not a guarantee. It can definitely help, but it cannot carry a weak structure. Now that's 5 traps, but if we stop there, you're only learning what not to do. The real value is what you should do instead. So let's evaluate promos like an investor and not just another fan. And yes, it is fine to be a fan. I am also a fan, but that's not what this video is about. To evaluate the promos, I use 5 pillars. Pillar 1 is distribution volume. No one ever really knows what the exact print numbers are, and that's fine. But you can still triangulate and get pretty close. If the promo is coming from a product that you see in stock for months, then you know that distribution volume is very high. But if the product comes from an event with limited attendance and controlled allocation, distribution volume is almost guaranteed to be much lower. The mistake that a lot of people make is that they assume that first wave availability, that equals final supply. And you know as well as I do that modern Pokemon rarely works that way. Pillar number 2 is the supply arrival speed. Promos that have guaranteed supply are going to arrive quickly. The product ships, people open it, and then copies start flooding the market. And that means that early pricing is unreliable because supply is still moving. Pillar number 3 is the absorption rate. This is the pillar that most people ignore because let's face it, most people don't want to do the work and we're all a little lazy. And you hear me talk about absorption a lot, and all absorption is the relationship between listings and completed sales. If new listings show up online and get bought up without forcing undercuts, then the market is absorbing supply. But if new listings show up and you see prices creeping down week after week, then demand is weak. So your job is to identify promos where the absorption rate is stronger than people think, because that's where the value forms. Moving on to pillar 4, and that's grading difficulty. A lot of people are going to assume that means, is this hard to get a PSA 10 in? And that's part of it, but the other part is, will people even want this card if it comes back as a 10? There are some promos that have a huge supply, but a very low gem mint rate. And when that happens, you can't just assume that the price is going to be solid and that it's going to keep going up. You have to make sure that demand is also there for that card. Also be watching for people online talking about promos that have bad centering, print lines, weird whitening patterns, or people complaining about the packaging method. Some promos are prone to damage because of how they're inserted into the packaging or how they're shipped. And a clear example of this are those metal cards from Celebrations. And if you're anything like me, you were so jazzed up to get these cards and try to get them graded. But oftentimes you would look at the back and you would see that gold foil just flaking right off the card. And if the gem rate is low, high grades can be meaningfully scarce. And now pillar number 5, and that's cross-collectability. And this is a category that I think has a hidden advantage. I think that promos that appeal to multiple collector groups tend to be more resilient. There are always going to be character collectors, era collectors, artists, trophy, or event collectors. And if a promo is only interesting to promo investors, then you're in a very narrow market. Because if the card has multiple collector pathways, then that buyer pool is deeper and less fragile. Now let's turn this into a practical decision process that you can use. When you see a promo getting hype, you need to ask yourself 5 questions before you start spending any real money. Question 1, what is the supply engine? Is supply coming from mass retail product that's going to be restocked? Is it coming from an event with limited distribution? Or is it coming from a one-time event with controlled allocation? Question number 2 is, where are we in the supply timeline? Are we in the early, middle, or late supply timeline? Because that matters a lot. Most people buy in the early phase because it just feels so exciting. But real investors only buy after they understand the shape of the cycle. Question number 3, what does the listing curve look like? If you're thinking about buying a specific card right now, go on TCG Player and look at the active listing count. Take a screenshot and then come back next week. If you see the listing count double, that's supply arriving into the market. If listings and sales are steady, that's market absorption. If listings are rising and sales are slowing, then watch out. That's risk. Question number 4, what's the grading curve? Is the pop report accelerating and are PSA 10s becoming more common? And is the market premium shrinking? Be able to answer those questions before you start buying up copies. And question number 5, who's going to buy this later? This is the most important question in investing, period. If the future buyer is unclear, then your exit out of this card is also unclear. And if your exit is unclear, then you're gambling even more than usual. And finally, I want to address a very common objection. People are going to say, well, some promos have exploded and some modern promos do really well. That's true, but when they do, it's usually because they have at least one of these advantages. The first is that it's a promo that has a character that's tied to massive and lasting demand. We're talking about Pikachu, Gengar, Charizard, characters like that. Or it's tied to a long-term cultural milestone. You're talking about the 151 promos, the celebrations promos, and the upcoming 30th anniversary promos. It could also be because that promo has real scarcity in the grade that matters. Just look at how much the Metal Charizard and Metal Pikachu from Celebrations still cost in a PSA 10. And finally, is it a promo that's a required piece for completionists? And this one comes into play whenever you're talking about staff stamp cards, top 10 cards, or world championship cards. And even then, timing still matters. If you bought early, you might be underwater for months before it turns around. And if you bought late, you might just be someone else's exit liquidity. Promos are not set cards with a special logo. Promos are their own supply system. And that's it. That's the framework. Use it and you'll stop wasting money on the hype cycle. If this helps you understand promos and how to invest in them better, hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.